Hey everybody, I just wanted to talk about Spider-Man Miles Morales. I ended up just finishing the game and I wanted to give my thoughts on where I think Insomniac could take the future of their Spider-Man game series. This is a series I've enjoyed since the start. I ended up pre-ordering both of the games and it's been really awesome. It's kind of an expansion on what Activision was doing with their Spider-Man games in the 2010s, which I really appreciate, but I think there's a lot of potential for future spin-offs and future mainline games. So I assume what they're going to do is keep Spider-Man as the Peter Parker Spider-Man as the main Spider-Man games, if that makes sense. So we're going to see a sequel to Spider-Man. This is going to be a spoiler, so this video will be full of spoilers. So if you don't want anything spoiled, I'd click out. But so Spider-Man 2, it seems, is going to be Spider-Man versus the Green Goblin. I'm assuming Miles will be integrated into that game in one way or another, given that essentially by the end of this game, he's become a full-blown hero, much like Peter, which is pretty exciting. So I would assume we'll see something like that. I'm hoping we'll be able to get some sort of co-op, be it like an online or like a switchable a way to switch between the two characters in combat for certain missions, or in certain missions do Peter or play as Miles for other missions. That would be a kind of cool solution to that too. But that's what I assume they're going to do with that. I'm pretty excited to see them go against Green Goblin. What I wanted to talk about more were potential future side games I would like to see. Obviously, Spider-Man has a pretty wide variety of characters to pick from. I mean, we've always had the main Peter Parker Spider-Man. Now Miles, of course, has become more or less another main character in the Spider-Man universe, but you have a variety of others, and I just wanted to talk about some potential spin-offs I could see happening. One would be a SpiderGwen game. I think that's probably where they would go next if they're going to do another spin-off with the Spider-Man IP. Spider-Gwen, you kind of need to set up a Spider-Verse style, which I wouldn't really surprise me. The Spider-Man brand is really leaning into Spider-Verse with, of course, the Into the Spider-Verse being a huge hit. So now there's even rumors of the third Spider-Man Homecoming trilogy movie, I suppose, including Peter Parker, both Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire's editions, which would be interesting. So if they wanted to segue into something like that, I could see Spider-Gwen. That would also give an opportunity to make a whole new game world and stuff, which might not actually be viable for a spin-off unless they pulled her into the main Spider-Man world. If you played Miles Morales so far, you'd know the world essentially was just the same as what we saw in the previous Spider-Man game, with the only caveat being that it's during the winter time, so it was very light modification when it came to that. It was more of a content expansion, so I don't know how viable Spider-Gwen would be, but there are definitely interesting play options. When you play as Miles in this game, he's not quite as beefy as Peter Parker. You fight a lot more enemies, and his moveset's definitely a lot more stealth-based. You don't have the same amount of offensive gadgets that Peter had. You don't have the same attack power and skill, I feel, as Peter Parker, so getting beaten down and overwhelmed in this game is a lot more common. With that said, I think you could kind of take that a step further, maybe make Gwen more of a speed-based character, a little less stealth, maybe a little offensively stronger than Miles even. But I feel like there's a lot of cool stylistic options if they were to do that. I guess they could just do graphical and texture mods on the main world that they make for the Spider-Man 2 game and put her in there as like a different universe, and kind of talk about how they could potentially move into a Spider-Verse. With that said, another option I think would be pretty cool would be like a Spider-Man 2099. You could have kind of like the origin story to Spider-Man 2099, or he could be an established hero like Peter already. I feel like that'd be a kind of cool game world. Like, I always thought like a Batman Beyond or a Spider-Man 2099 would be a pretty cool idea for a game. You could put a lot of variation into what we see. You could take aspects from the comics, and of course, kind of gives you more free reign to come up with your own, like, I don't know, little spaceships and like flying cars and whatever else. Make up some new villains for the game. I always thought the 2099 segments were really fun, in like Spider-Man Shattered Dimensions, which came out on Xbox back in like 2008 or 9. And I feel like you could kind of take aspects from that, kind of expand, make your own lore a little bit, and maybe connect them. If they were to go into a Spider-Verse, I actually didn't mind what they did with the comics. That might be a little lore heavy with like the vampires that tried to basically kill everyone in the Spider-Verse, so everyone kind of had to come together. Another option you could always do is something like Spider-Verse, where the universe is combined through some MacGuffin machine, and they have to stop a common threat. The nice thing about the Spider-Verse concept is it's fairly abstract, so they don't really have to like bind it to what they did in the comics, and they don't really have to bind it to what they did in the movie. So you have a variety of options. But another character I think they might do is like a Venom game. I would love to see like Agent Venom, or even just like seeing Venom and symbiotes. They haven't really touched that aspect of the Spider-Man lore yet, but that's definitely something they could do. Scarlet Spider would be cool to introduce. You could do a little Clone Saga. I don't think the Clone Saga was an inherently bad idea when they did it in the comics. Like the Clone Saga in Ultimate was pretty cool. It's just how they executed the 90s Clone Saga in the main continuity of comics didn't work out, but something like a Scarlet Spider spinoff would be really awesome. Maybe you could start to introduce aspects of that in the second Spider-Man game. I'm kind of hesitant to say I want a Spider-Verse game yet. I mean, I don't know how many games they plan on doing in this series, if it'll be a trilogy, if it'll be what. I would assume Insomniac doesn't solely want to become a Spider-Man machine. And I don't even really consider Miles to be its own game. In a lot of ways, it feels like its own kind of unique, like larger than a DLC expansion, but still kind of more of just a side game than a full game. But if they made like a B team that kind of worked on stuff like a SpiderGwen or a Spider-Man 2099 or Scarlet Spider or whatever, I think that would be pretty cool. I think there's a lot of directions you could go, a lot of different like sagas and stuff you could do. It is kind of interesting that the Peter in the Insomniac Spider-Man universe has been Spider-Man for like 8 years, and we're just seeing the arrival of villains like Dr. Octopus and Green Goblin. But I think in a lot of ways that kind of gives you free reign to open up and expand what you could do. And I feel like there is opportunities to do things like Venom and stuff, or Sinister Six again. I guess they did Sinister Six in the first game, but I mean, there's a lot of options they could do. So, I mean, so far, I guess I may as well just go into my thoughts on Spider-Man Miles Morales. I'll probably do another review at some point on this channel, but just because I'm talking about the game, I may as well just put this out there too. I enjoyed the game quite a bit. It was kind of short. I've already almost 100%ed it, and that's with working full-time, moving into a new apartment, and doing significant class load for college. So it definitely didn't have the same playtime as Spider-Man. The original PS4 Spider-Man took me like 5 or 6 days to 100%, which doesn't sound like a long time, but that's when I just moved to Las Vegas and I didn't go to college or have a full-time job or anything. So considering that, it was short, but I consider it more of an expansion. As a full-price $50 game, it's not totally worth it to get it for PS4, truthfully. I bought it for PS4 just because I don't have a PS5 yet. I don't plan on buying a PS5 anytime soon because they're fucking expensive and hard to find. But yeah, honestly, like, I've also played it on PS4 because my friend has a PS4. I would probably recommend just waiting for that PS4 edition to come out, or PS5. Wait until you get a PS5 to do it. Unless you want to buy like the bundle with the remastered version, I imagine that's a pretty good deal, especially if you haven't played the original Spider-Man game, because the original Insomniac Spider-Man game is fantastic. That said, I do enjoy that there's a lot more enemies. You have to rely more on stealth. It feels like I felt like in a lot of ways the combat in Insomniac Spider-Man was, like original Spider-Man I should say, was kind of easy. It kind of had like that Arkham Assassin's Creed babies first beat 'em up type of gameplay. But this game definitely ups the challenge quite a bit. Like I said, there's less gadgets. The invisibility and venom sting abilities are really cool and add variation. The animations are beautiful. I took this gameplay from a Rad Brad video because I just moved apartments and didn't capture gameplay for it, and I just wanted to talk about it. Dude's got like 12 million subscribers. I don't think he's going to come after me, but still, the link to that video will be in the description, so watch the original if you want to see that. I'll probably do a full retrospective on this eventually once I have better access to a capture card and faster internet speeds, because my new internet speeds are pretty terrible. But I'm focusing on my Why It Sucks series, and I will be coming out with my solo video and my Rogue One video pretty shortly. So that's kind of just an off-the-cuff reaction to Spider-Man, where I could see the series, or Spider-Man Miles Morales, I'm sorry, where I could see the series going in the next couple years. And I would love to see this series expanded. I do think Miles is a good game, but like I said, I would either wait till it goes down in price on PS4, wait for a sale, or if you have a PS5, I'd recommend getting it, especially now with pretty minimal amounts of stuff to play. I'm not sure they'll do another spin-off like this, especially if they integrate Miles more fully into Spider-Man 2. But yeah, it's a good time. I'm kind of in a Spider-Man mood too, so once I'm done with my Rogue One Why It Sucks, I think I'm going to review the Sam Raimi trilogy, because I have some stuff to say about that, and it's been a couple years since I've watched those movies, which is rare because I used to watch those. Those were a yearly watch for me, but it's been a few years now. Kind of in a Spider-Man kick after this PS5 game came out, so I definitely will. I'll definitely probably review those after Rogue One. And like I said, yeah, the PS5 version is actually a lot of fun. I played the PS5 briefly because my friend got one, and the controller is really rad. Still think I'm going to buy an Xbox X Series first, though, because I'm an Xbox fanboy, so fuck y'all.